Hello and welcome to the Telescope. Every week we bring you a fresh insight from the biggest car market in the world. Today we get to drive the Li Auto i8. Most of the time the press car is supplied to us at minimum 85% SoC, so that's why I very rarely show you the charging performance. But today this car is currently at 12% SoC, and this is Li Auto's first party supercharger at 5C. This car has a 97 kilowatt hour battery, and I'm going to show you in real time how fast this car, supposedly it's going to finish from 10% to 90% in under 10 minutes. Let's see. Now with just that, it's currently charging at 469 kilowatts, and it's going to finish this charge in under 10 minutes. Which means I need to be fast because English is not my first language, so I write scripts for every video because sometimes I just, yeah, exactly that happened. I forgot what I'm about to say. There's been a lot of chatter or even controversy about this car's styling, mainly its body style, because people have been debating, is this an SUV or an MPV? For context, this car originally doesn't look like this. Because of the, let's say, disappointment in the Li Auto Mega, they've changed the styling to be more SUV-like. Here at the front, these two creases doesn't exist. Now come around to the side, the bigger change is here at the rear end. They've made this more SUV-like, giving it more of a shoulder, so less of a teardrop shape. Now I have to say, people have been talking about this, and having seen the real car, it's no getting away from the fact that it just really looks like a Neo ES8, and some Li Auto employees even agree. But I also have a very personal explanation about what this car really is. To me, the Li Auto i8 is just a three-row ID3. I mean, look at them. They both have a minimum front overhang. Both of them moved a cowl point forward to make them almost a one-box design. That also makes the A-pillar very slippery. They even both have this piece of plastic. It's called a cowl cover. They do exactly the same thing. They avoid stagnated pressure buildup. Here at this point, they also avoid the airflow from directly hitting the wiper, therefore reducing drag. To me, this is not an SUV. It's not an MPV either. To me, this is just a teardrop car. It's the natural solution to maximize aero efficiency without compromising vertical space inside the car. But I will also say I prefer this car's original shape, originally what it's supposed to be, and that is the Li Auto Mega's shape more. And I have not criticized Li Auto Mega's exterior design. Just because I'm closely attached to Neo doesn't mean I hate everything Li Auto does. I've always wanted someone to make me a bigger ID3, but Li Auto has taken this to the extreme. The front seats is, as you can see, in a very relaxed position. The second row seat is set to my position, and I have to mention, excellent space underneath the front seats so I can tuck my feet in. Now let's go to the third row. And I have to say, longitudinally, this car, despite being about 70 mil shorter than the inevitable rival, let's face it, the ONVO L90, longitudinally, this car has, I would say, about maybe 30 to 40 mil extra longitudinal space compared to the L90. Laterally, I think this third row is slightly narrower than the ONVO L90 because the ONVO L90 is much more of a broader shoulder traditional SUV, and this is a teardrop car, so it has to close in here laterally on the third row. Vertically, they are within 4 millimeters of each other, with the advantage to the ONVO L90. So as you can see, this is a really usable three-row SUV, no, not SUV, not MPV, yes, teardrop car. Now being a teardrop car, this i8 is still quite tall. Here at the highest point, at its standard ride height, it's 1740 millimeters. Now, some other electric SUVs like the Tesla Model Y, I know that's a two-row car, but if you really want to minimize your frontal area, you could be as low as 1600 mil. So where does all that thickness go? It's mainly here in the battery. This car has a very thick battery, but not for the usual reasons I've mentioned in other telescope reviews. Some very budget-minded electric vehicles cannot afford to have a thin battery pack because they don't have the budget. Thicker batteries are cheaper, but this is for a completely different reason. It's for the 5C charging. They built the battery pack so thick so they can build in really robust cooling. As you can see here, the charge we just finished, they've charged almost 500 kilometers worth of CLTC range. For this car, that's nearly 70 kilowatt hours of energy in 10 minutes. Peak charging rate, 475 kilowatts. This car has a 96 kilowatt hour battery. And here's the real kicker, average charging speed at 401 kilowatts. This car has two sets of cooling systems. One is the traditional water-cooled system, the all-in-one thermal management system that Tesla has. But the coolant of this car's HVAC system could also directly cool the battery pack at 5C charging. Also, they have to cool the battery enough so that even if it's frequently charging at 5C, it needs to keep the battery cool enough so that it doesn't lose significant longevity. I also need to point out, because this is charging, Li Auto has actually been asked by the government to open all of their charging stations to every other EV owner. So people like me, if you drive a Xiaomi, if you drive a Tesla, could also use this kind of supercharging stations. Previously, for a period of time, the 5C stations are only open to Li Auto Megas and also this kind of 5C compatible Li Auto models. So on the highway, they have built nearly 1,000 of these ultra-fast charging stations directly into the highway service areas. But because every other electric vehicles could use this as well, let's say at peak hours, you're more likely to encounter a queue at this kind of ultra-fast supercharging stations to, let's say, a bespoke exclusive solution like the battery swap. My opinions on the interior of the Li Auto cars has been very consistent, because let's just face it, this has roughly the same interior compared to the Li Auto Mega and also the Li Auto L9. That is, Li Auto's interior design is so simple and generic, so much so they heavily rely on the material qualities. Now, this completely white steering wheel definitely helps, and this white color scheme also helps to uplift this interior. But I can also tell this car, being a pure battery electric car and having that such a massive battery and also a 5C charging capable battery, this car is facing much bigger challenge on the cost side, so much so that the interior material choices inevitably has been dropped somewhat compared to the Li Auto Mega and also to the Li Auto L9. For example, this door panel is still covered in soft touch PU leather, but the decoration, let's say, is a step down compared to the Li Auto Mega and also the Li Auto L9. And also most visibly is this speaker directly in front of the driver. It's at such an important position. You know, it's at the position where this car, if it has an instrument display, it's at that kind of position. It's always at the center line of the driver's vision. Now, being at such an important location, I think they could have tried more to give this speaker more of a decoration. Now, all of these things I just mentioned wouldn't be so much of a problem if the ONVO L90 doesn't exist, because yes, they could improve this door panel, they could add more decoration to this speaker, but it's also nice enough, you know, it's okay. But because the ONVO L90 exists, and also I have to say, the lack of a frunk, I don't think it's that much of a problem, because as I mentioned, this car has a much beefier cooling system than usual cars because of the 5C charging. Now, all of that cooling takes space exactly where the frunk is supposed to be, and also this car's nose is that short. Even if it has a frunk, it wouldn't be that big anyway. Now, all of these wouldn't be so much of a problem if the ONVO L90 doesn't exist. With that double knock, you have a 240-litre frunk, and that L90 significantly undercuts this car's on price. So yeah, it is quite challenging for this car. As someone who's very closely attached to NIO, my opinions on Li Auto products has always been surprisingly positive. I like a lot of the things about Li Auto products. Let me just mention a few of them. It has physical controls for mirror adjustment, physical controls for the steering wheel adjustment. The door opens the way it should be. I still think the physical latch works better than any of the electronic button solutions you may have on a Tesla or on the Neo. And they also have a latch here for the glove box, which I complained the lack of a button on the ONVO L90's glove box. Also here, the fridge is not as fancy as the ONVO L90. It's a manual opening and closing of the fridge, but I still think this is a superior solution because it has a always on, not quite a physical button, but an always on button. And I don't think it's that much of a hassle to close the door on the fridge. I mean, just ask yourself this: will you buy a fridge in your home that is electronically powered but cannot be operated by hand unless you touch the screen twice? No, you won't. So this is just common sense. But that doesn't mean this IA doesn't have a trick or two up its sleeves. Most prominently, and I have experienced this firsthand in the Li Auto Mega first, is the world-class NVH. And I mean, I cannot find appropriate words to describe the NVH performance of not just this, but also the Li Auto Mega. First time I drove the Li Auto Mega, the bigger brother of this car, on a familiar piece of road and that road I drive daily in my ID3, which admittedly doesn't have great NVH. And because the Li Auto products doesn't have an instrument display and it's all relying on the heads-up display, I sort of start judging the car based on the wind noise. And when the car reached the similar kind of wind noise level to my Volkswagen ID3, I looked down, the car was doing 140 kph. So the wind noise of the ID3 at 90 kph equals the Li Auto Mega at 140 kph, and I guarantee you I'm not making this up. Ask anyone who've driven any Li Auto products, the NVH level across the board, not just the very high end, the Li Auto Mega, but also at a very entry level, the L6. And this car, in the workshop, they quoted this car's official noise figure at 60 kph is slightly noisier than the Mega, but at 120 kph, maybe because this has more of a nose, this is even more sloping, and this car is slightly narrower than and also slightly lower than the Mega. It's had a slightly smaller frontal area. This car at 120 kph is even quieter than the Li Auto Mega, which I'll show you a chart. This is from an independent testing. Is already quieter than the current Mercedes S-Class, which, first of all, that's a saloon. The Li Auto Mega is an MPV, and this car is 1740 millimeters tall. This is so much taller than a saloon. Secondly, we are benchmarking against a Mercedes S-Class. Now, if you don't know what Mercedes S-Class stands for in terms of automotive engineering, then you are not really the target audience of this video, and you can switch to another video. It's the Mercedes S-Class, and it's quieter than that. Now, compared to this car's inevitable and, in my opinion, the incorrect rival, the ONVO L90, the ONVO L90 is not a noisy car. Don't get me wrong. I've sat in that car at 120 kph. The noise, it reads roughly 66, 67 decibels, which is by no means noisy. It's roughly on par with the BMW iX, which is also a pure battery electric SUV and also quite big. So nobody would be sitting into the ONVO L90 and traveling at 120 kph and say that's a noisy car. But compared to this is noticeably quieter than even the ONVO L90, which I need to emphasize that is not a noisy car. The chassis of this car is still, I would say, a comfort biased setup. But because this car is pure battery electric, it has a much lower center of gravity compared to the range extender models of the Li Auto range extender SUVs, it feels that much more composed, but it's still a comfort bias setup. It doesn't feel quite as floaty as the Li Auto Mega, and also because this car is on a bigger diameter wheel, the sidewalls of this car is that much less than the Mega. You know, on the Mega, if you're jumping on and off the bridge, it will bounce once, twice, and sometimes even 3 times. And I don't think that's a problem with a car of that size and then pure MPV like the Li Auto Mega. But being slightly smaller and being slightly more dynamic, this car, I think, I would still like it to be sportier than this, but nobody would be complaining that this car is too comfort biased. This is, at least in the sport mode, is not uncompromisingly soft. It still has decent body control. As an ID3 owner myself, I have no problem accepting this design. I actually know quite well the advantages of this kind of design. But the Li Auto i8 is launching at a wrong time, right after the Xiaomi YU7, which has given us such an exciting design for Model Y's price. And then there's the ONVO L90, which beats this car in interior design and practicality while being much cheaper. And I also think it's a slight shame that Li Auto kind of hesitated on this car's identity or body style, because had this car been originally what it's supposed to be, it could be even more unique and arguably differentiate itself even further from the ONVO L90, because let's face it, it's clearly not an SUV. Now, this car being an i8 means it will have a smaller brother, and I can tell you already, it's the Li Auto i6. That is basically a 2-row version of this. It mimics the ID3 concept even closer than this. I've already summarized a very long tagline for the Li Auto i6 that I couldn't even remember in my head. So here goes. The Li Auto i6 is an ID3 ultra long range Pro Max with Rolls-Royce NVH, but with a Model Y's price. That's a much more exciting car, isn't it? That is all from the Telescope today. If you enjoyed this video, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.